and to be clear, the blockchain for Bitcoin is slow and expensive. Mm-hmm. And so nobody wants to buy a $3 latte and wait 5 minutes for the, latte payment to be recorded on the blockchain. But with the Lightning Network, my understanding is those things get batched, done quickly at some marked price, and then they get put on the blockchain.
And that seems like that's another reason why SBI, is going with Bitcoin SV, because it's all about big blocks and all the benefits with that and efficiency. And so,
well, we go with whatever works.
Yeah.
We also have like our private blockchain stuff. We also invest in stuff like Ripple and Corda as well. But in terms of public blockchains.
Yeah. Let's go right into why that's so disruptive. I mean, and it's built on the Lightning Network, right? Just as a technology point.
Yeah. So there's a giant misconception that Bitcoin somehow is tremendously slow and expensive, and that's not true. Bitcoin is actually the fastest asset in the world and the cheapest to move with reliable security. And that's because of the Lightning Network. And so our entire payment stack and infrastructure is built on both Bitcoin and the Lightning Network.
Do you see any downsides to this? Like, have you seen flaws in the whole system from a security perspective, from a scaling perspective? Any of that, or is Lightning working well?
The flaw with Lightning is really that and this can be remediated in a number of ways, but you have to sort of pre-fund these channels. So it's a weird concept to have to inject liquidity into a channel in order to accept a payment. So I'm sure those user experience problems can be solved, but it's still in a state of relative immaturity. So
I think that the FinCEN releases will demand a little bit more closer review from people who really want to run Lightning Network nodes as a business.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the FinCEN guidelines, do they say that if you're a custodian or custodian in the funds, then is that also constitute a money service business or a money transmitter if you're custodian of funds?
I'm not too clear about that actually, but I would hazard to say probably yes, but I could be wrong. I believe that certainly if you have custodian funds, it means you have dominion over them and you can do what you will with them, and therefore if you're holding them. It should be clearly a money service business. Now, whether that's a money transfer business, it may or may not be, but you clearly are a money service business. And if not only that, you're a depository, you're a bank.
Some of the partners we talk to, there is this kind of looming doubt without like official regulatory clarity. Been very fortunate to work with Senator Lummis and other policymakers on ensuring that. I mean, I think the DOJ is having a hearing with banks now on swipe fees, and so I think, the U.S. government, the world should want to empower this payment network to move us all forward, suppress pricing, include more people around the planet to be able to make payments anywhere, cheap and fast. And so I think maybe the last big milestone would be a bit of regulatory clarity. Like, hey, this is not a security. This is a real payment standard that we want to see more Americans using, and we want to support merchants and their ability to integrate it because it's better for pricing, it's better for consumers, it's better for inclusion. So I think like that staple would mean a lot, and I think it's coming. But I don't think it's necessary. But if there were to be like a big moment, like, oh man, like floodgates come off, here comes Jeff Bezos, he's going to build his own thing into Amazon, it's probably the regulatory clarity that it's worth Amazon's time right now.
I mean, miners are taking fees for a transaction because they're on-chain versus Lightning, like BTC Core, where if you're doing Lightning, it's like one person on Lightning, and then it goes to another person on Lightning node, and then to the next and the next. There's someone in between making fees. So, so it's interesting because miners are taking fees, but they're not a money service business, though. Can you explain how that is? I
guess you asked all the big questions. This is not scripted, by the way. So that's a very good question, and they are not money service or transfer business in Bitcoin. One key thing is in BTC, you do have to wait for a block. So actually, you could argue BTC miners, maybe money transmitters, and the reason why money does
even on chain BTC and not going through Lightning.
That's right, and well, this is my hypothesis. The reason why miners aren't really doing the transaction in BSV is because they're literally just agreeing on the order. The transaction has already been done, but in BTC, a transaction is not done until it's confirmed in a block. Why? Because of replace by fees.
Yeah.
So if you can replace by fee, the transaction is not closed until it comes in a block. Now you can argue the miners are making blocks. You can argue the miners are doing the transaction then.
And you can argue maybe that the miners are in custody of the,
facilitating the money transfer. Facilitating the money transfer. Because if they never mine the block, then it can always be replaced, which means the transaction is not finalized and closed. So,
no one can control it. It's never going to go down like a Solana or a Visa. Then the Lightning Network is actually not a blockchain. And that's why it's going to be faster and superior to any other payment network. it's not a block. It doesn't have it's not a blockchain. It's designed to make this digital rock that's going to live forever move at the speed of light and settle for as cheap as possible. And then that's why we spent the last decade building the base layer as secure and robust and allowing digital money to move across space and time. And is it a little inefficient? Can it get expensive at the base layer? Yeah, but it's required to have the properties that allow it to live forever despite any circumstance. And then on top of it, we can build the Lightning Network, which is just a payment standard, not a blockchain at all, that allows it to move so fast and so quick.
When mining subsidy goes to zero, that's when miners are going to have to be much more agile, be much more dynamic in their mining business. Their mining farms are needing to probably manage their hash in more dynamic ways. And I think that's really going to show its resilience, because the BTC network is vulnerable, because if they suffer a catastrophic loss of hash for whatever reason, price drop or something happens, big continent-wide blackout, whatever happens, they won't be able to dig themselves out of that sort of hole, that mempool flood that will pile up. But
yeah, and even besides that, with BTC and Lightning, is that if all the fees are now being collected by Lightning and the miners aren't collecting any fees, with the subsidies being reduced with the halving, I mean, miners are going to be making less and less and less, to where who's going to want to mine? I mean, the security is going to not be there, to where it's just, there won't even be anyone, because who's going to secure the network? And that's by having bigger blocks. My understanding is, maybe you might answer this question. You could have a really giant block, and what was it? The number of transactions, you could have 1 billion transactions, I guess maybe in a block, versus 10 transactions in a block. But the amount of electricity and energy is the same amount that's required, whether it's 10 billion transactions per second, versus 1 or 10 transactions per second a block. So is that true? I mean, I believe that's the case. And so that's why it's so much better to have a bigger block. So you're just you're using a little bit of energy, but you're getting, look at all these fees that you're getting, you're making all that, so yet you're still spending the same amount of energy, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You're much more efficient in energy use. And also, so basically you could also scale up and down your hash. That I think that's the key. I mean, your mining hash power can fluctuate. It's allowed to fluctuate, because you can go up and down, and the more transactions you process, the more energy efficient you are, and you can even be more eventually efficient than the entire banking system, the current banking system, right? Whereas BTC, your mining hash power has to keep going up, otherwise you die, right? And if it ever drops down, it becomes more and more energy wasteful, because they're reducing the amount of transactions, and you're hashing more, right? So you're only getting worse in terms of energy efficiency if you're going to count the number of transactions processed. So it doesn't make sense economically. But
the second time we've tried to use Bitcoin with Strike Wallet here in El Salvador, and 0 for 2.
Wow.
Maybe I should take what the IMF is going to do.
Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe to our channel for the latest in crypto news daily.